Hello everyone and welcome to the Spurs Pursuits. I'm your host Martin Frank and today we'll be discussing Igor Tudor's quite possible shortest reign in the Premier League with a twist. I will get onto that in a minute. So, I hope you've had a fantastic weekend away from Tottenham. We haven't played during this weekend. It's the second weekend in 4 weeks that we've, as Tottenham fans, have had the privilege to breathe comfortably, to not be let down by this club, which is an absolute mess right now. I hope you've had time to reflect on the Crystal Palace game and realise what can possibly be done to get us out of this situation and this horrible, horrible mess. Right, let's get right into Igor Tudor and the reign so far. He's been in charge for a total of 23 days today. Today is the 23rd day he is in charge of this football club. Since then, he has lost the North London derby, losing 4-1 on his debut, losing 2-1 to Fulham, but being absolutely outplayed by them at Craven Cottage, and to make it a 3 in a row, a loss at home. His second defeat at home in a row against Crystal Palace after capitulating after Mickey van der Ven's red card and finishing the half 3-1 down after being in the lead for the first time under Igor Tudor's tenure. And that lead only lasting 2 minutes. So out of a total of 270 minutes, Igor Tudor's Tottenham Hotspur have been in the lead for a whopping 3 minutes. Absolutely impressive. Do you know what's more impressive? Is he could go down as the manager with the shortest reign. Not only in top flight English football, but actually equaling Tottenham Hotspur's record. That's how bad we have been in recent years. Let me explain. So, Igor Tudor has had many similarities drawn out between himself and Christian Stellini, Antonio Conte's amazing assistant coach. He is an amazing assistant coach by a distance. He really is a fantastic assistant coach. However, as an interim, that's a different topic of conversation. And many fans have drawn similarities in the appearance of him. Who would have known it would have been a very similar tenure with very similar, characteristics, can we say? Because Christian Stellini, back in 2023, after taking charge when Antonio Conte was fired, had only 4 games played. However, during those 4 games, he managed to win a game of football against Brighton after Son Heung-min put it top corner. De Zerbi got sent off that game. It was a fantastic... Well, it actually wasn't a fantastic game. It was fantastic drama with what was going on the touchline because Christian Stellini made some very controversial comments on behalf of Roberto De Zerbi. Apart from that, a draw at Everton, a loss against Bournemouth, and a whooping, an absolute whooping, as Jamie O'Hara would say on TalkSport, against Newcastle, where Tottenham Hotspur found themselves 5-0 down in 21 minutes. Mind-blowing. He was sacked. Guess how long he reigned? 29 days. That's Christian Stellini, 29 days. Igor Tudor, as I already mentioned, 23 days in charge. You'll never guess what would happen if he loses against Atletico Madrid tomorrow and on Sunday against Liverpool. You would never guess how many days that would be. 29. You would never guess how many games he would be in charge for. 4. Do you see those similarities between Christian Stellini and Igor Tudor? That is impressive. That is impressive how the fans, the minute Igor Tudor was linked with the club, linked him, compared him with Christian Stellini, and it is, boy oh boy, becoming more and more of a reality. However, Christian Stellini had at disposal Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Hugo Lloris, Christian Romero, big names, Ivan Perisic, fantastic names, a fit team as well. Dejan Kulusevski, Højbjerg, Bentancur, I could go on. Igor Tudor has a mess. And a mess. And a mess. That's all he's got. So, if Igor Tudor fails to win his next 2 games, there is massive pressure on his name. And he could be, joint with Christian Stellini, the shortest period of time a manager has reigned. Not only at Tottenham Hotspur, that would equal Christian Stellini's record, but in English top flight itself. I have an interesting statistic by Transfer Market, although I don't quite agree with it. I think they have got this wrong, because if you look at this, you have the shortest manager reigns all-time Premier League. I do not see Christian Stellini there. He reigned for 29 days, and he was an interim manager, but he was still a manager of a football club. So, Transfer Market, you have got that wrong, unfortunately, because either way, Igor Tudor, if he is sacked this week on Sunday, he would surpass Sam Allardyce. He would surpass the former Tottenham Hotspur coach, Ange Postecoglou, and even Les Reed, who are all 40 days or under. I mean, Sam Allardyce's 30 days at Leeds is absolutely insane. It is absolutely mind-blowing. So, that puts things into perspective, and you do realise how difficult that actually is to beat Liverpool, to beat Atletico Madrid, or at least to show some fight, to show something that Spurs fans could get hold of. Because the big game is not Anfield. Yes, that's a big game as well for us, but we haven't won this in 2011. The big game is next week on the 22nd of March against Nottingham Forest at home at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against the relegation rivals Forest. That's the big game. That's a 6-pointer. Crystal Palace was not a 6-pointer. Crystal Palace was safe. That's a 6-pointer. You do not want to walk in on the 22nd of March with Igor Tudor as your coach if he has failed to win a single game of football after 5-6 attempts. Could make that 7 overall. And so, that brings me to my second point from Transfer Market, which they have got right. I have double checked that. This is very interesting. Winless managers. Now, if Nottingham Forest fail to beat Fulham at home in the Premier League this weekend, if Tottenham Hotspur also fail to beat Liverpool at Anfield this weekend, one of the 2 managers, or both of them, potentially, if they are both still in a job, Vitor Pereira should be, because he's managed to draw at Etihad, so there's clearly some potential there. They could both equalise Ange Postecoglou's record from this season, going 5 games winless as a manager. Both of them would fail to win a single game of football, which Ange Postecoglou did himself. Insane. So, if Igor Tudor is somehow in a job, if Igor Tudor manages to beat Vitor Pereira after Vitor Pereira fails to win this weekend, or if Tottenham Hotspur sack Igor Tudor this week, Vitor Pereira could well equal Ange Postecoglou's record of 5 winless games in a row in one season. That would put into perspective how much of a shambles Nottingham Forest are. That derby record right there with Paul Jewell, 24 games winless. Oh my lord. And people were comparing Wolverhampton Wanderers, who are absolutely turning into prime Brazil, with this derby team. So yes, back to Tottenham Hotspur, that would be insane. I've already mentioned Stellini actually managed to win. If Igor Tudor was sacked after 4 games in charge, after the same amount of days in charge as Christian Stellini would actually hold a better record, winning 1 game of football. Igor Tudor would fail to do that if he is sacked, because if he beats Liverpool, there's no chance he's getting sacked. And we're speaking Premier League games of football. Of course, Igor Tudor will be in charge of his fourth game tomorrow in Madrid against Atletico. But we are speaking Premier League solely because that is what matters for Tottenham Hotspur. This is the only thing that matters for Tottenham Hotspur. Now moving on, winless run continues. Something absolutely insane. Tottenham Hotspur have now surpassed the record of 10 winless games in a row in the Premier League since 1994. We are now have equalled the worst form since 1975, where Tottenham Hotspur went 11 games without a single victory from August to October. Now that could be well and truly beaten. We've already beaten the time period because it's already now been January, February, March, 3 months. Although August, September, October is also 3 months, so I do apologise for that. But if we fail to beat Anfield, that would be 12 Premier League games in a row without a single win. We would be towards the end of March with a single win in this calendar year. Absolutely mind-boggling. So to add to the misery, just one loss away from equaling 6 defeats in a row, the worst since 2004, which we are well and truly on course to doing. We've suffered 5 on the bounce already, so just one win away from equaling the 2004 6 wins in a row record. Now, I've already mentioned Igor Tudor and Victor Pereira. They have very much similar in winless performances. However, the difference is Victor Pereira has actually managed to gain a draw, almost getting a draw out of the Liverpool game as well. With Igor Tudor, we haven't seen any positive signs, so there's a massive, massive difference there. Now, could Spurs see coaching movement again this season? Well, it is well and truly on the cards. Because as mentioned in the previous section of this video, the pressure surrounding the 47-year-old continues to heighten, and with relegation rivals actually managing to pick up points or performances, the gap has now closed to just 1 point. Tottenham Hotspur just 1 point away from safety, ahead of relegation rivals West Ham United and Nottingham Forest. So the upcoming results could potentially cause a massive shift, which I have already touched upon. Igor Tudor could well and truly be out the door this week. This Sunday, after losing tomorrow and losing at Anfield, we can well and truly see another manager at the club of Tottenham Hotspur going into next week. That could actually happen. The names to look out for: Sean Dyche, Ryan Mason, Glenn Hoddle, Tim Sherwood. Tim Sherwood has repeatedly spoken about on Sky Sports that he would be willing to take the job, that it's a job that cannot be turned down. Harry Redknapp, the 79-year-old who hasn't coached in over a decade. That's how desperate Tottenham Hotspur may become. That's how desperate the owners may become. And rightly so, for them. Although they are the reason that we are in this mess. Why? Because Championship would set us back £250 million. That is 285 million euros. And we are speaking about streaming rights. We are speaking about revenue. We are speaking about shirt sales, ticket prices. So obviously everything to do with revenue there. And we are speaking about players sold. It would be devastating. And this brings me on to my last point. Why should Igor Tudor be sacked? Well, because in these 3 games that we've seen so far, there has been absolutely no progress on the pitch. And we are speaking from 3 different aspects: the performance itself, the mentality, and any signs of attacking and defensive patterns. Tottenham Hotspur have been easy to slice through in all 3 games, and Tottenham Hotspur have been toothless going forward. We can also look at the decisions of Igor Tudor, because looking back now at that Crystal Palace game, Igor Tudor, on paper, that lineup looked fantastic. It finally looked like Igor Tudor had realised that football is not a science. Sometimes using common sense and sometimes making things simple is the way to go, is the answer to success. Right? Well, he didn't understand that because he again went for a 5-3-2 formation. Sorry, he went for a 5-2-3, but either way, he went 5 at the back and he placed Pedro Porro, arguably the best player for this system. His best position is right wing back, which he hasn't placed is Antonio Conte. And Igor Tudor played him at right centre back. I understand you want to maybe progress the ball forward like a Christian Romero does with line breaking passes. Fine. But you cannot play your best player, who is a right wing back, who gets you crosses, who gets you up the field, as a right centre back. Pedro Porro has never played right centre back. Pedro Porro has never played centre back. Even Ange Postecoglou saw that. So these little decisions that you're still not reverting to something simple. Go 4-3-3 now. We have the players to play that. And you are, playing a 5-2-3 or a 5-3-2. It doesn't matter either way. We're not suited for a back five when we have just two fit centre backs. It's the common sense that isn't being used. So many pundits and fans also have speculated the lack of improvement from his predecessor Thomas Frank, which is true. If you look at Thomas Frank's last 3 performances and you watch these 3, there is no difference there. So Frank had started the 8-game winless run, which is still insane how he wasn't sacked prior to that, whether at West Ham or after West Ham or Bournemouth or Burnley. And the lack of improvement I've already touched upon. Performance, mentality, patterns of play, leadership as well. These 4 attributes remaining at an all-time low. It's absolutely awful. And this was also proven by Mickey Van der Ven's brain-dead decision to pull Ismail Assar inside the box to send himself off. The second captain in a row this season to do so in 2 months. Thankfully, Van der Ven only misses 1 game, which is very important. He will miss Anfield, but he will be back for the Tottenham Hotspur clash against Nottingham Forest. The absolute 6-pointer, the absolutely crucial, the pivotal, the biggest game of Tottenham Hotspur's modern history. So after that game, obviously, the whole game flipped on its head. After the mistake, the whole game flipped on its head and Spurs' fragile mentality shone through as Palace were able to comfortably and easily get another 2 before half-time, killing the game off, which proves the lack of leadership, the lack of strong mentality, the fragility of every single player there. Igor Tudor, if he fails to win tomorrow or show a performance that we can hang on to, will be under huge pressure going into Anfield and getting battered at Anfield, showing nothing there, with Liverpool actually not being so good. This is probably one of the weakest Liverpool teams in recent history. If he gets defeated there in a manner where Tottenham Hotspur fans are turning, which they will be, trust me, we could see Igor Tudor out the door and bringing in someone who knows the club from the inside, which is what the players need right now. That's how bad it is. Let me know in the comments below if you think Igor Tudor will still be in charge next Monday. Thank you guys for watching and see you later.